Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we crack open complex topics and extract the insights that truly matter. Today we're tackling something pretty fascinating. How does a tiny desert ant, Cataglyphus fortis, manage to not just survive, but actually, thrive on Saharan sand that can hit 60 degrees Celsius? That's over 140 Fahrenheit.
It really is incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, and that little ant, it perfectly shows this basic connection, right, between anatomy, its physical form, and physiology, how that form actually works.
Exactly. Form and function.
So our mission here is to explore how all animals, from a simple little hydra right up to us, deal with the same big challenges, getting nutrients, fighting infections, reproducing. But despite those shared problems, there's this huge variety in forms. It all comes down to adaptation through natural selection, form and function, always evolving together.
Absolutely. And we're going to break that down. We'll start right at the beginning, how cells build tissues, organs, the whole system. Then we'll look at how all these different parts, coordinate everything. And maybe most importantly, how animals keep their internal environment stable homeostasis, even when the outside world is just completely chaotic. We'll definitely keep thinking about creatures like that desert ant, especially things like temperature control and managing salt and water.
Okay, perfect. So let's start right there at the beginning. How does something really complex like a wolf or, yeah, even our desert ant get built up from just tiny individual cells? It seems kind of like magic.
Huh. Well, it definitely feels like it sometimes, but it's pure biology. Incredibly elegant biology. It starts with the cell. That's your basic unit. Then cells that are similar in structure and function, they group together to form tissues. Think of the outer layer of your skin for protection or big muscles for movement.
Okay, like specialized teams of cells.
Exactly. And then different types of tissues join forces to create organs. An organ is a functional unit, like the pancreas. It's amazing because it does double duty digestion and hormone production for blood sugar.
Right, one organ, multiple jobs.
Yep. And finally, you have organ systems where different organs work together in a coordinated way, like the digestive system or the circulatory system, heart, blood, vessels, all working as one.
Okay,
That's the hierarchy. Cell, tissue, organ, system. It's how complexity gets built.
got it. So tissues are the fundamental building blocks above the cell level. What are the main types of tissues we see in animals, like the basic materials?
Generally, animals rely on four main types. First up is epithelial tissue. Picture sheets of cells packed really tightly together. They form coverings and linings like your skin on the outside or the lining of your gut on the inside. They're barriers, but also active surfaces for things like absorption or secretion.
Okay, the body surfaces and linings. What's next?
Then you have connective tissue. Now, this is different. The cells here are more scattered and they're embedded in what we call an extracellular matrix. Could be like a web of fibers in a liquid or jelly or even a solid foundation.
So less tightly packed.
Right. Its job is mainly support and connection, holding organs in place, forming tendons and ligaments, making up bone and cartilage. Even blood is considered a connective tissue because it connects everything and transports things.
Blood. Wow, okay. That's surprising. What else?
Third is muscle tissue. These cells are specialized for contraction for movement. You've got three main kinds. Skeletal muscle is what you control voluntarily, attached to your bones. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart wall. It's involuntary. And smooth muscle, also involuntary, lines organs like your stomach or blood vessels, controlling things like digestion or blood pressure.
The movers and shakers, literally. And the last one.
Last but not least, nervous tissue. This is the body's communication network. It's built from specialized cells called neurons. Neurons transmit information using electrical and chemical signals, receiving input, processing it, and sending out commands. Think of it as the body's wiring, connecting, and controlling everything. Glial cells support these neurons too.
It's really something when you think that even plants and animals, which seem so different, face really similar core challenges just to, stay alive. How do they overlap in the problems they need to solve?
That's a great point, because life has fundamental requirements, right? Both need to sense and respond to their environment. A sunflower tracking the sun isn't so different conceptually from an ant detecting heat.
Okay, sensing the world.
They both need energy and carbon. Plants get it through photosynthesis, animals by eating. Both need internal regulation and growth, often using hormones, though the specifics differ. Transport is key. For both plants have vessels for water and sugars. Animals have circulatory systems for blood. Reproduction often involved providing resources for the next generation, like seeds with food reserves or mammals producing milk.
Makes sense.
And even things like gas exchange or nutrient absorption show similar strategies developing large surface areas. Think of the inside of a leaf versus the inside of our lungs or intestines. Lots of folds and branches to maximize that exchange. It really shows convergent evolution tackling the same basic problems.
So with all these specialized cells, tissues, organs, how does the whole animal coordinate everything? You mentioned a wolf hunting or our ant navigating the heat. That needs precise timing, senses, muscles, brain, all working together.
That coordination is mainly managed by two major systems, the endocrine system and the nervous system. They work in different ways, but often together.
Okay, how do they differ?
The endocrine system uses chemical messengers called hormones. These are released into the bloodstream and travel pretty much everywhere. It's like sending out a broadcast message. This makes it relatively slow. Signals take seconds to minutes to act, but the effects can last a long time, minutes to hours. It's great for gradual, body-wide changes like growth, metabolism, or reproduction.
A slower, more general broadcast. What about the nervous system?
The nervous system is the complete opposite in some ways. It uses electrical signals, nerve impulses that travel along specific pathways, like dedicated wires directly to target cells. It's incredibly fast, we're talking fractions of a second, and the effects are usually short-lived. Perfect for immediate responses, reflexes, catching prey, escaping danger, like sending a direct, instant message.
That makes sense. Fast and specific versus slower and widespread.
Hmm.
But what stops these systems, or just our body in general, from going haywire? How is it all kept in check?
That's where feedback loops are absolutely critical. They are fundamental to regulation. The most common type by far is negative feedback.
Negative feedback.
Okay.
How does that work?
Think about your house thermostat. If the room gets too cold, the thermostat turns the heat on. When the room warms up to the set temperature, the thermostat turns the heat off. The response heating reduces the original stimulus being cold.
Right. It counteracts the change.
Exactly. Most systems in the body work this way to maintain a stable internal state, that homeostasis we mentioned, like blood sugar control. High glucose triggers insulin release. Insulin lowers glucose, and lower glucose then stops the insulin release. It dampens the stimulus.
Okay, so that's for stability. What about the other kind? Positive feedback.
Positive feedback is less common for maintaining day-to-day balance because it does the opposite. The response amplifies the original stimulus. It pushes a process towards completion.
Amplifies it. Like how?
The classic example is childbirth. The pressure of the baby's head triggers uterine contractions. Those contractions cause the release of a hormone, oxytocin, which causes even stronger contractions, which causes more oxytocin release. It keeps building until the baby is born, completing the process. Or milk release during nursing suckling triggers oxytocin, which releases milk, encouraging more suckling.
So it drives things forward to an endpoint instead of keeping them steady. Got it. Now, back to hormones for a sec.
Yeah.
How do they actually signal to a cell? Do they all knock on the door the same way?
Not quite. It depends mainly on whether they can get through the cell door, the cell membrane. Water-soluble hormones like ADH or insulin can't pass through the lipid membrane easily. So they bind to receptor proteins on the outside surface of the cell. This binding triggers a chain reaction inside the cell, a signal transduction pathway that ultimately leads to the cell's response.
Okay, they ring the doorbell and pass the message inside. What about the others?
The lipid-soluble hormones, like steroid hormones, testosterone, estrogen, thyroid hormones, they can slip right through the cell membrane. They typically bind to receptor proteins inside the cytoplasm or nucleus. This hormone receptor complex then often goes directly to the DNA and changes which genes are being turned on or off, altering the cell's protein production and function.
So they go right inside and give instructions directly.
Interesting. And what's really cool is that the same hormone can have different effects on different target cells. It all depends on the type of receptor that cell has or the specific pathway inside the cell that gets activated.
Like one key opening different locks.
Exactly. Take epinephrine or adrenaline. In liver cells, it triggers glucose release. In blood vessels supplying skeletal muscles, it causes them to widen, increasing blood flow. But in blood vessels supplying the intestines, it causes them to constrict, all coordinated for that fight or flight response.
Wow. Okay, so if you've ever, felt yourself sweat buckets on a hot day or shivered uncontrollably when it's freezing, that's your body working hard to keep things balanced. Let's talk more about that balancing act, homeostasis.
Right. Homeostasis is all about maintaining that relatively stable internal environment despite what's happening outside. We keep our core temperature hovering around 37 Celsius, our blood pH close to 7.4, blood sugar within a certain range. Animals achieve this in different ways. Some are regulators, like that river otter you mentioned. It uses internal mechanisms to keep its body temperature constant, whether the water is warm or freezing.
It fights the change.
Yes. Others are conformers. A largemouth bass, for instance, lets its body temperature match the temperature of the lake water. It conforms to the environment for that variable.
So it just goes with the flow, temperature-wise.
Pretty much. And many animals are a mix. They might regulate their salt balance, but conform to ambient temperature, for example. But the core idea of homeostasis involves that thermostat analogy. There's usually a set point, like 37 degrees C, sensors to detect deviations, a control center, often in the brain, to process information, and then a response to bring things back towards the set point, usually via negative feedback.
Okay, so keeping things stable. How does that apply to temperature specifically, that thermoregulation you mentioned? How does our ant manage on that incredibly hot sand?
Thermoregulation is a huge part of homeostasis for many animals. The first big distinction is between endotherms and ectotherms.
Right, warm-blooded and cold-blooded.
Ah.
Though I hear those terms aren't perfect.
They aren't ideal, no. Endotherms, like mammals and birds, generate most of their heat internally through metabolic activity. This lets them stay warm and active in cold places, but it costs a lot of energy. They need much more food. Ectotherms, like reptiles, amphibians, fish, and most invertebrates, including our ant, get most of their heat from the external environment basking in the sun, sitting on a warm rock. They need way less food, but their activity levels often depend on the ambient temperature.
So the desert ant is an ectotherm. How does it cope with extreme heat then?
Behavior is key for ectotherms in extreme conditions. The ant might only forage during specific times, maybe very quickly, and uses long legs to keep its body slightly further from the scorching sand. It absolutely relies on getting back to its cooler underground nest before its body temperature gets dangerously high. All animals, though, manage heat exchange with their environment through four physical processes. There's radiation absorbing heat from the sun or losing heat to the cooler air.
Like sunbathing.
Exactly. Then evaporation losing heat as water turns to gas. That's sweating for us. Or panting for a dog. It's very effective for cooling. Convection is heat transfer through the movement of air or fluid. A cool breeze feels good because it carries heat away from your skin via convection. Blood circulating heat around the body is also convection.
Okay, and the last one.
Conduction. That's direct heat transfer between objects in contact, like the ant's feet on the hot sand or you sitting on a cold bench.
Got it. Radiation, evaporation, convection, conduction. So animals use adaptations to manage these.
Absolutely. Insulation is a big one. Fur, feathers, blubber, they trap a layer of air or fat to reduce heat loss or sometimes gain. Circulatory adaptations are also crucial. When you're hot, blood vessels near your skin undergo vasodilation. They widen, bringing more warm blood to the surface to radiate heat away.
Like getting flushed when you exercise.
Exactly. And when you're cold, vasoconstriction happens, those vessels narrow, reducing blood flow to the skin to conserve core heat. And there's a really clever circulatory trick called countercurrent exchange. Think of a duck or a goose standing on ice.
How do their feet not freeze?
It's countercurrent exchange. The artery carrying warm blood down the leg runs right alongside the vein carrying cold blood back up. Heat flows from the warm artery to the cold vein along the whole length. So by the time the arterial blood reaches the foot, it's already cooled down a bit, losing less heat to the ice. And the venous blood gets warmed up on its way back, preventing the core body from getting chilled. It traps heat in the core. It's incredibly efficient.
That is clever. Like a built-in heat exchanger.
Precisely. Animals can also acclimatize, make gradual physiological adjustments. Growing thicker fur in winter is one example. Some fish even produce antifreeze proteins.
Amazing. Okay, moving beyond temperature, there's another critical balancing act. Salts and water. Why is that so vital?
Oh, it's fundamental. Every cell in the body is bathed in fluid, and the concentration of salts, sugars, etc., and the amount of water in that fluid has to be kept within very tight limits. If the fluid outside a cell becomes too watery, hyposmotic, water rushes into the cell by osmosis, potentially making it swell and burst. If the fluid becomes too salty, hyperosmotic, water rushes out and the cell shrivels and dies.
So getting that balance wrong is catastrophic for cells.
Absolutely. So osmoregulation is the process of controlling those solute concentrations and balancing water gain and loss. And it's tightly linked to excretion, which is getting rid of metabolic waste products, especially toxic nitrogenous waste from breaking down proteins and nucleic acids. Often the same organ systems handle both jobs.
Okay, osmoregulation and excretion, often linked. How do animals in different environments tackle this, say a fish in the ocean versus one in a freshwater lake?
Huge difference. A marine fish, like a cod, lives in salt water, which is much saltier, hyperosmotic, than its body fluid, so it's constantly losing water to the sea by osmosis.
It's living in a dehydrating environment.
Exactly. To compensate, it has to drink large amounts of seawater. But that brings in excess salt. So it uses spiralized chloride cells in its gills to actively pump salt out, and its kidneys produce only a tiny amount of concentrated urine to minimize water loss.
Okay, drinks a lot, pumps out salt. What about the freshwater fish, like a perch?
It has the opposite problem. It lives in water that's much less salty, hyposamotic, than its body fluids. So water constantly floods into its body by osmosis, and salts tend to diffuse out.
So it's constantly swelling up with water.
Potentially, yes. So it almost never drinks. Instead, its kidneys work overtime to pump out huge volumes of very dilute urine to get rid of all that excess water. And it uses its gills to actively pump salts in from the water and gets more salts from its food.
Fascinating contrasts. What about land animals like us? We're not surrounded by water.
We face the constant threat of dehydration. We lose water through urine, feces, sweating, even just breathing. So our main strategies are behavioral drinking water, eating moist foods, and physiological. We can produce metabolic water as a byproduct of cellular respiration.
Metabolic water. We make our own water.
In small amounts, yes. For some desert animals, like kangaroo rats or certain mice, this metabolic water, combined with incredibly efficient kidneys that produce super concentrated urine, is enough to let them survive on dry seeds without ever drinking liquid water.
Yeah, it's incredible adaptation. Now, what about those toxic nitrogen wastes you mentioned? How do animals get rid of that stuff?
Right, when you break down proteins and nucleic acids, you end up with nitrogen, often in the form of ammonia, NH3. Ammonia is highly toxic. Aquatic animals, like many fish, can often just excrete ammonia directly into the water where it gets diluted quickly. It requires a lot of water loss, though.
Okay, so ammonia works if you live in water. What about on land?
Land animals usually need to convert ammonia into something less toxic that requires less water to excrete. Mammals, amphibians, sharks, some fish we convert ammonia into urea in our liver. It's less toxic and takes less water to get rid of, but making it costs energy.
Urea, that's what's in our urine.
Mostly yes, but there's another option, especially important for saving water: uric acid. Insects, land snails, reptiles, and birds convert ammonia into uric acid. Uric acid is even less toxic than urea, and it's not very soluble in water, so it can be excreted as a semi-solid paste or even a dry powder with very little water loss. Think of bird droppings. The white stuff is mostly uric acid. It's energetically expensive to make, but it's a fantastic adaptation for dry environments.
Ammonia, urea, uric acid. Different strategies depending on toxicity and water availability. How do the actual excretory systems work? What are the steps?
Most excretory systems, from simple ones in worms to our kidneys, use a similar four-step process, often involving specialized layers of cells called transport epithelia. First is filtration. Body fluid, like blood, is forced under pressure through a filter. Water and small solutes, salts, sugars, urea, amino acids pass through, forming a filtrate. Big molecules like proteins and cells stay behind.
Like making coffee, the water insoluble stuff goes through, the grounds stay behind.
Exactly like that. Second is reabsorption. As the filtrate moves through the excretory tubule, the body selectively reclaims the useful substances it needs: glucose, amino acids, vitamins, most of the water, and salts. This often requires active transport, using energy.
Taking back the good stuff.
Yep. Third is secretion. Other waste products, like toxins or excess ions that didn't get filtered out initially, are actively transported from the body fluid into the filtrate. It's another way to get rid of unwanted stuff.
Adding more waste to the disposal bin.
Right. And finally, fourth is excretion. The final processed filtrate, now called urine, containing the concentrated wastes, is released from the body. Filtration, reabsorption, secretion, excretion, that's the basic plan.
Even insects use this.
Insects have a really neat system with Malpighian tubules. They don't really filter like we do. Instead, they actively secrete wastes and salts into the tubules. Water follows by osmosis, and then in the rectum, they reabsorb almost all the water and useful salts, leaving behind nearly dry waste. Super water efficient.
Wow. Okay, let's really dive into our own system then. The mammalian kidney. It sounds like a true masterpiece, especially for living on land.
It absolutely is. It's this incredibly compact organ that excels at both osmoregulation and excretion. The workhorse inside is the nephron. There are about 1 million of these microscopic filtering units in each human kidney. Each nephron consists of a long, folded tubule and a ball of capillaries called the glomerulus. Blood gets filtered from the glomerulus into the start of the tubule, which is cup-shaped, called Bowman's capsule. That initial filtrate then begins its journey.
1 million tiny filters. Okay, let's follow a drop of that filtrate. What happens that travels through the nephron's twists and turns?
It's quite a ride. First, it enters the proximal tubule. This section is a powerhouse of reabsorption. Most of the water, salt, NaCl, potassium, virtually all the glucose and amino acids are pulled back into the blood here. Some toxins are also secreted into the tubule. Filtrate volume drops a lot, but its concentration stays about the same as blood plasma.
Okay, reclaiming the valuables early on. Where next?
Next, it dives down into the loop of Henle. This loop extends from the outer part of the kidney cortex down into the much saltier inner part, medulla. The descending limb is permeable to water, but not salt.
Water can leave, salt can't.
Right. So as the filtrate goes deeper into the salty medulla, water leaves by osmosis, making the filtrate inside the loop get progressively more concentrated.
Getting saltier as it goes down.
Exactly. Then it makes a hairpin turn and heads back up in the ascending limb. Now, the rules change. This part is impermeable to water, but permeable to salt. In the lower thin part, salt diffuses out passively. In the upper thick part, salt is actively pumped out.
So now salt leaves, but water can't follow.
Precisely. This pumping of salt out of the ascending limb is crucial. It helps create that salty environment in the medulla. And because salt is leaving but water isn't, the filtrate becomes more dilute as it goes up.
Wow, okay. Concentrate on the way down, diluted on the way up, and setting up that salt gradient outside. What happens after the loop?
It enters the distal tubule. Here, there's more fine-tuning of salt, NaCl, and potassium K+ levels. It also plays a role in regulating blood pH by secreting hydrogen ions, H+, and reabsorbing bicarbonate, HgO3.
Final adjustments. And then?
Then the filtrate from several nephrons flows into a collecting duct. This duct passes back down through the medulla towards the renal pelvis. And this is where the final urine concentration is determined. The key here is that the collecting duct's permeability to water is regulated by hormones. If the body needs to conserve water, the duct becomes very permeable. Water then flows out by osmosis into that hyperosmotic, very salty medulla, leaving behind a small volume of highly concentrated urine. Urea also diffuses out in the deep medulla, adding to the osmotic gradient.
So the saltiness created by the loop of Henle allows the collecting duct to pull water out at the end if needed. It's that countercurrent system.
That's the heart of the countercurrent multiplier system, yes. The loop of Henle establishes the osmotic gradient by pumping out salt, and the collecting duct uses that gradient to concentrate the urine. The associated blood vessels, the vasa recta, also have a countercurrent arrangement that helps maintain the gradient without washing it away.
And this is why desert animals have long loops.
Exactly. Animals adapted to very dry environments, like kangaroo rats or hopping mice, have exceptionally long loops of Henle that reach deep into a highly concentrated medulla. This allows them to create a much steeper gradient and thus reabsorb much more water, producing incredibly concentrated urine, maybe 9,000 milliosmoles per liter, compared to our maximum of about 1,200. It's a critical terrestrial adaptation.
That makes so much sense. The kidney's flexibility is amazing, too. You mentioned vampire bats earlier.
Ah, yes, the vampire bat. A fantastic example of kidney adaptability. When they feed on blood, which is mostly water and protein, they need to get rid of excess water quickly so they can fly. Their kidneys produce huge amounts of very dilute urine, like incredibly fast.
Shedding water weight.
Right. But then later, back in the roost, they're digesting all that protein, which produces a lot of urea, but they have no water intake. Now they need to conserve water desperately while getting rid of the urea. So their kidneys shift gears completely and start producing small volumes of extremely concentrated urine. That flexibility is crucial for their lifestyle.
Incredible. So how does the body actually control the kidney to make these switches, dilute urine sometimes, concentrated urine other times?
It's primarily hormonal control. A key player is antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, also called vasopressin.
Antidiuretic, so it
E.
reduces urine.
Exactly. ADH release is triggered mainly by an increase in blood osmolarity, meaning your blood gets too concentrated, maybe because you're dehydrated or ate salty food.
Hmm.
Osmoreceptor cells in the hypothalamus in your brain detect this. The hypothalamus signals the posterior pituitary gland to release ADH into the blood. ADH travels to the kidneys and makes the collecting ducts more permeable to water by increasing the number of special water channel proteins called aquaporins in their cell membrane.
More channels means more water can leave the duct.
Right. More water is reabsorbed back into the body, the urine becomes more concentrated and less voluminous, and blood osmolarity goes back down. It's a classic negative feedback loop. If your blood is too dilute, ADH release drops, the ducts become less permeable, and you produce lots of dilute urine.
Okay, ADH handles the water permeability. Is that the whole story?
There's another major system, especially important for regulating blood volume and pressure, called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or RAAS. This system responds if your blood pressure or blood volume drops significantly, like from major fluid loss or bleeding.
So this is more about volume and pressure.
Yes, though it impacts salt and water too. It's a cascade. Low blood pressure causes the kidney to release an enzyme called renin. Renin triggers the formation of a peptide called angiotensin II. Angiotensin II is potent stuff. It causes blood vessels to constrict, which raises blood pressure directly. It also stimulates the adrenal glands to release another hormone, aldosterone. Aldosterone acts on the distal tubules and collecting ducts, making them reabsorb more sodium, Ne+, and water. This increases blood volume and pressure. So RAAS works alongside ADH to maintain overall fluid balance and blood pressure.
Wow, what an incredibly intricate and responsive system. It really puts things like hydration and blood pressure into perspective.
Doesn't it? It's a constant balancing act, finely tuned by these interacting systems.
What an incredible journey, really, into how animals are built, how they coordinate everything, and how they keep their internal world stable.
It really is. If we recap the main points, we saw that tight link between animal form and function at every level, from cells organized into tissues, organs, and systems. We looked at the two big control systems, the slower, widespread endocrine system using hormones, and the fast, targeted nervous system, and how feedback loops, especially negative feedback, are crucial for regulation.
Right, keeping things in balance.
Then we explored homeostasis, that steady internal state, focusing on thermoregulation, how endotherms and ectotherms manage heat using insulation, circulation tricks like countercurrent exchange, and behavior. And finally, we tackled osmoregulation and excretion, seeing how animals deal with water balance and toxic nitrogenous wastes like ammonia, urea, or uric acid, culminating in the amazing mammalian kidney and its countercurrent multiplier system, a key adaptation for conserving water on land, all regulated by hormones like ADH and the RAAS pathway.
So, thinking back to that desert ant, or even just feeling yourself sweat or shiver, it's a glimpse into this constant, complex symphony of biological regulation happening inside all of us, all the time. It really underscores how precisely life is adapted to survive its environment.
It does indeed. We hope this deep dive has illuminated some of these complex processes and maybe sparked even more curiosity about how life works.
Definitely. Makes you wonder what other everyday biological events hide such incredible complexity. From the Deep Dive team, thanks so much for joining us today.